NTV Today, and this is where we're facing Parliament, and of course...
No, I have the money. So, Honorable Chair, I stood there waiting to see who is going to come out of that toilet. And when they realized there's somebody... Because my phone rang and I answered my phone, I'm sure they must have captured my voice. They never came out of that toilet until the bell rang to go to the chambers. And so I left and I went to the chamber. And the members maybe followed me after. So unfortunately, I may not be able to tell you who was speaking in the toilet, but there were ladies, obviously, because that was the ladies' toilet. And I was able to know the voices. The voices were from the ladies, but I cannot be able to pinpoint and tell you the voice was from so-and-so. But they actually said it in the toilet that they were being given money by Honorable Fatuma Gedi. So that is why I gave out my public announcement, because it was really shocking that that was happening. And even inside the toilet, when they were talking, they were saying that for me, I've been given mine and for another member, and they were speaking in another language, which I could not be able to pick. But it means that the sharing was happening there, because I think that was the transaction that was going in there. That is all what I have to say. And I could confirm that I said that, and it is not. It was not a misquote. It is actually the truth. Thank you.
Very well. Honourable members, you've heard what the Honourable Mushomba has had to say. She has confirmed that the report is accurate, that indeed it is not a fabrication. So, honourable members, it is open to you to seek any further clarifications that you may wish from the Honourable Gadoni. Just to also announce that the two members who have walked in are also members of this committee. The Honourable Omar Mwinyi, member for Changamwe, is a member of this committee, and the Honourable Mwandime is also a member of this committee. Panel members, that's Honourable Mwadi. Yes.
Thank you, Chair, for the chance. And thank you, Mheshimiwa, for shedding light. In fact, I've been disturbed every time I read that members were receiving from the toilets. And I wondered whether it was true or not. But you have confirmed that you have information to that effect. But I'm interested to know, number one, when you sat where you're having your lunch with three members, are you able to tell us the names of these members? And as you do that, also tell us, did you see this member, Fatuma Gedi, dishing out money, or is it that you heard from somebody else? And who would that other person be? And the third one and last is, did you try to make effort to get into the toilet to find out who are there? Just those three.
Thank you. May I respond?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Like I said, where I sat, we sat with three members. I can only remember one member called Honorable Mukami Rahab from Nyeri County. That's the only member I can remember. The other two members, I can't remember their names, but if I see the face, I can obviously tell you. But the names I can't remember. I'm sorry. The second question, you are asking if I attempted to get into the toilet?
No. Whether you actually saw Fatima get in the toilet or you overheard. Yes, thank you, Chair. Whether you saw Fatima Gedi giving the money or you overheard somebody mention the name, or how did you establish this name? Because you have already, you're on oath and you have given us a name, so we need to follow up. That's the reason why.
Like I said, I was outside the toilet lobby place, and the people who were speaking were inside the toilet. And you know there are many cubicles in the toilet. And so for me, I was not able to get into the toilet because I waited for them to come out and they never appeared. But from their conversations, I picked that is the person who gave out the money. But I did not see her give out the money, but I I heard the discussions that were happening inside the toilet.
Did you actually see her?
No, I did not see her.
Honorable Tuwe?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From the daily of 15th of August, you said they were telling us that the money is not our mother's. Who is this who was telling you that the money was not our mother's?
Now, after we got into the chambers, I did not last long in the chamber. I actually did not even get to the voting and the contribution process because I was traveling to Mombasa in about an hour's time, and therefore I had to step out. When I was stepping out along the corridors of Parliament as I walked out to the reception, I found some group of members discussing about the money issues, and those were women reps. They were discussing about the issues of money and who is giving the money, and there was a very heated debate. And I do remember personally shouting to them, a group of many of them, and I said, I cannot believe that members can take blood money to kill our people with poisoned sugar. And somebody shouted back, because I remember there was a lot of, when you're moving and you're going, you may not be able to register a lot of activities in terms of who is saying what and who is responding. But I remember somebody saying in Kiswahili, kwenda huko, hiyo pesa sio ya mama yako. You can disappear. That is not your mother's money. And to me, it never registered who is that telling me. But because there was a group of people, and I just walked away. And to me, that is what I captured. And that is why I was quoting that, because that is what I captured.
Mr. Speaker, we have very few members of Parliament who are actually women. I believe you must be knowing one.
I do remember in that grouping of many women reps, I do remember seeing Rahab Mukami and Jane Jiro. Mukami is a woman rep for Nyeri, and Jane Jiro is a woman rep for Embu, if I'm not wrong. Okay. And those are the ladies that I can remember who are participating in that kind of discussions and were jittery about people, going to the low levels of. Well, they were accusing. It's like they were accusing. I will not participate in that kind of a vote because members have been compromised and it is blood money. I remember I saying it is blood money. I remember talking something like that. But like I said, members, I was on the move, so I did not put a lot of attention to the discussions therein. But I was on the move. But I remember because I had asked Mukami when I was coming out, I had asked her to accompany me to the car because there's a scarf that I had that belonged to her that I needed to give her. So when I was coming out of the chamber, because I was traveling, I flashed her and I told her, had alerted her that when I would be moving out of the chamber, please join me so that I can give you your scarf. So she moved out of the chamber before me, and so I think that's why I found her, with the other women ahead of me. Okay. I hope I'm clear.
Gladwell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mheshimiwa, I'm glad you've come to actually shed light on the allegations that we've been hearing. And I want to know, from where you're sitting, you are convinced that actually corruption took place prior to the sugar report. And if so, corruption is a criminal act. And being criminal, the way you look or you felt disgusted, I would want to know what steps you took thereafter before you actually reached to media to explain your dissatisfaction, because there are other avenues that you would have taken.
I'm on record, Mheshimiwa, on the caucus, the women caucus on our WhatsApp page, I registered my dissatisfaction very strongly. And I said that the leadership of the women rep caucus should take over the matter and establish who was dishing out money, especially. In fact, my voice was very, very specialized to women, because I said women are the custodians of ethics, we are the custodians of our families, and we should have the lead in protecting our communities from poisonous sugar. And I said we should be the lead in terms of saying no to such kind of activities. So I do remember registering. I can't remember. I don't know whether we can be able to retrieve my comment, but I think that's the only place I felt that I should vent out my frustrations.
So you are confirming that the corruption allegation was true?
Well, I said if that is true, we need to get to the bottom of the matter.
Honorable Albere.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Honorable Gadomi Wamuchomba, I tend to read some element of lies in your statement. One, you said as you came in late from home because you are not feeling well, you sat down somewhere in the restaurant and you could see movement of members of parliament walk in and out, and a lot of movement taking place around where you are seated. And therefore, you really wanted to know what was happening. That means you said that there was every member who walked out, who came from that particular room where people were walking out excited, it seems that room was not very far away from where you are seated. And therefore, you wanted to investigate, to find out why people are coming out excited. And so you also wanted to get excited. But again, you could not really be able to, I cannot really be able to understand whether you were greeted with excitement or you were chased away. And you could not be able to establish then who was dishing out money in that particular room, because there is no way that person would have actually walked out from the door, not through the window. Wait a minute. And then you did not establish, yet you managed to walk to the toilets, only for you, again, to tell us that you are doing some makeup within the toilet, and yet the people are trying to whisper to each other inside the toilet that how much each was given. Do you want to tell me that two women or three women were inside one toilet? It is impossible. You must be saying some lies to us. Please speak the truth. Thank you.
Should I respond?
Yes, respond.
Thank you, Chair. Like I said, I think you didn't follow my story, Mheshimiwa. I said I was eating and I was waiting to be served my fruit. It took some time. My arrangement of thought was that I need to eat my food first and then I will go and check what's happening. Then later on, after I was done with my fruits, the call-out bell from the chamber went on, and therefore I had to go to the toilet first and then I go to the chamber. And that is my story. And I said I'm speaking the truth, and that is the truth.
Honorable Mushoba, the Honorable Alberes alluded to the fact that two ladies could not be in one toilet. What would be your comment on that?
I did not say that two ladies were in the toilet. I said the ladies were in the toilet cubes, because the cubes are many. Thank you.
I hope it's just for the benefit of the Honorable Albere. We wanted to get that clarification.
Honorable Gadomi Wamuchomba, you are a woman yourself, and the ladies who actually, the voices you've heard belongs to women as well. And it can only be actually a crime if you try to walk into or even actually talk to those people, if the person you wanted to speak to is one person. According to your statement, the voices you've heard belongs to two or three people inside one cube. Maybe it's a toilet, according to what you said. I can't imagine what is a cube, actually. Is it a toilet or is it a cube? I don't understand that, because I assume it's a toilet. So, if what you heard is voices of 2 or 3 people inside one cube or the toilet. Why didn't you also join them then? Because they are not actually, it's not a call of nature. It is just a discussion inside the toilet. Why didn't you find out? If at all, you wanted to carry out investigation. You wanted to do an investigation. Because what you are saying now is almost, it's like hearsay. It's not factual. Thank you.
May I respond, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
Unfortunately, I was not in the mission of investigations. Like I said, it was a call of nature like any other. And every time you go into the toilets and you find the cubicles are busy, and for this, for the record, I want to say the cubicles are the toilets themselves, because in the ladies' block, there are many toilet cubes. And each cube takes one client at a time, or one person at a time. So the ideal order is, if you find the toilet is busy, you wait, and there is a waiting place where you can work on your face or wash your hands as you wait. So I was not in the investigations mission. I was going to the toilet. And that's when I had the discussions from respective people in the toilet talking to each other. And that happens a lot, even in our washrooms. If I walk into a washroom with another woman who I'm familiar with, sometimes you will ask each other, is there tissue in your cubicle, or is your water? We are women. We talk even when we are in the cubicles.
Follow up, eh?
Honorable Gadomi Omuchomba. Gadomi Omuchomba, yeah. Gadoni Omuchomba. If then you did not see that person physically, because that is the only time you'll be able to identify that truly the person I'm seeing is so and so. You actually continue to say that the person whose voice you've heard is Fatuma Gedi. For heaven's sake, how will you conclude that that particular voice, you will assume that is for so and so when you have not seen that person physically? And why didn't you then establish the voice of the second and the third person whom she was with in that particular cubic? And again, these days, I don't know if you have ever come across a program called Ridiculous then, where some individuals will tend to exaggerate a voice of another person, say for instance like Moi, during the time of Moi. And you will actually be able to believe that the person speaking is Moi himself, when actually it's not Moi. It is someone who is trying to imitate the voice of Moi. Will I be wrong to say that you picked on a wrong voice then, if you did not see that person physically? Thank you.
Honourable members, I think we need to, first of all, because I think the Honourable Alberi has completely gotten it wrong. Yeah. But I don't want to be the one saying it. Let us hear from the horse's mouth, because I don't recall the Honourable Mushomba saying that she had the voice of Fatuma Gedi. No. She's saying that she had somebody mention that it was Fatuma Gedi. Those are different. And that's why you can see all the other members are wondering whether we are on the. But maybe the Honourable Gadoni Mushomba can now put it in your own words what it is that happened, so that the Honourable Albella can.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and the chair of this committee. I think the Honourable has gotten it wrong. I did not say that the voice that I had speaking from the toilet cubicles was from or for Honorable Fatuma Gedi. I said the ladies who are speaking in the toilet, giving experiences of who has given them money, were mentioning the name of the one Honorable Fatuma Gedi.
Let's get Honorable Mwinyi and seeing his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to establish from Honorable Omuchomba. After you had maybe come back from Mombasa, did you get interested perhaps in finding out from the two women reps whom you had recognized among the other women reps, to know who actually uttered those ridiculous remarks about hii pesa si ya mama yako. Were you not interested perhaps? Or if you did they perhaps inform you who these ladies were?
Yes, thank you. May I respond? Thank you, Chair. Indeed, I did, because even when I went to Mombasa, I kept on calling the two ladies that I mentioned that I had an association with. The lady that I was carrying the scarf for, and we are going to my car to pick, that is the Honorable Faith Mukami. And we had a very long discussion on the phone, sharing our disappointment. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to say this, but I have to say it because it's the reality. The Honorable Faith Mukami had just lost a sister out of cancer, and she's never recovered from the pain. And because she's my friend, I know how she feels every time we talk about cancer issues. And to her, she was very moved. Because, of course, in reality that contaminated sugar has very high probability of carrying the catalysts of cancer diseases. And so when I was talking to Honorable Mukami, I was trying to comfort her, tell her, even if maybe some people don't see the sense and the pain in the disease scam. It happened, and it is sad that it happened in a parliament where we expected members to uphold morals and stand for the common mwananchi in defense. So I had very long discussion with the Honorable Mukami, not as a registrator, but as a sister, because I know she felt it. And even when we were talking about it, she could keep on saying, can't members see the danger this poisonous sugar poses to us? I've just lost a sister, a very painful death. So that is in that line that I followed up the story.
My question is, were you not interested in finding out who were giving out those remarks? Hii pesa si ya mama yako. Or were you not offended, and maybe you wanted to get to know?
Well, I hope I should respond. Like I said, the remarks came as I walked. So I did not actually pay a lot of attention to who has said the words and whether there was a plan of confrontation or something like that. It's just the way you could shout and say, I am really disappointed. And somebody says, kwenda uko. The way people just dismiss others. So to me, it never really caught my attention because I was on the move. So I did not follow up to know who said those words. Because like I said, it was a voice from a midst of many women in the corridor. And it was not only women who are in the corridor. Those parliamentary corridors sometimes can be busy, especially when there's a heated debate in the chambers. So I was not able to really pick out the specific.
Clarification?
Yes.
Clarification?
There are some names you are mentioning. I'm sorry, I have some flu. You've said Faith Mukami. Is it Faith Mukami?
Rahab.
Yes.
Rahab Mukami.
So you meant Rahab Mukami?
Yes, Rahab Mukami, sorry.
Yes,
yes,
please.
Thank you. Thank you.
Honorable Mwadi.
Yeah, it's okay. Now I'm coming, Mheshimiwa, back to where the issue of money, because that's what has brought us here, not the other issues around it. But I hear you when you say you came from lunch and then you went to a toilet, and some people were talking from the cubicle. Just to confirm, is it the case that they were shouting from their own cubicle, or were they together in one central place? Because you say you were at the lobby where you are making up. Then from the lobby, of course, you get to the toilet cubicles. So they were speaking from their own toilet cubicle and shouting to each other? Is that the case?
Yes, yeah. Mheshimiwa, that's the case.
Right. And then I need to know also from you, did you see money changing hand, or you just picked it from the conversation?
I did not see money changing hands, but I picked it from their conversations.
So then tell this committee as I wind up, this statement, which of course you said is true, which is from the People Daily, and it says, it's not propaganda, that's what you're saying. I'm quoting now, quote unquote. The MPs received the money in toilets in Parliament. I was in Parliament when the money was being dished out, and I saw where the MPs were collecting it from. Where is that? Because then the toilet, they were shouting, they were not collecting the money. Where is this place?
Like I said, thank you. Mr. Chair, can I respond?
Yes, please.
Like I said, when I was eating, I saw where members were getting into and coming out from, which, and I said, is the hotel that is next to the new hotel block. I don't know whether I am able to describe the hotel properly. The new hotel block.
The new restaurant.
The new restaurant, yes.
Yes.
And I was seated at the corridor on this other side. So I was actually seated directly to where the members were going in and where they were coming out. And I said they were coming out very excitedly. I mean, shouting and laughing. And I said, when I was not able to go and identify what was happening inside the hotel, after I finished my fruits, the members who came out from that room, when they walked out to the toilet block, I followed them. I found out they have already gotten into the toilet and their handbags were outside at the lobby, because most of the time ladies leave their handbags at the lobby. So I knew they were inside and they were speaking inside. And I want to be clear, because I followed them from the back, I cannot be able to tell who it is that was, ahead of me, because they were inside. They were facing the other side.
So even as they came out excited, you did not see them carry money. You don't know whether exactly it's the money that excited them or some information, but they came out excited all the same.
Precisely, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Chair,
yes, George.
I would like to find out which room is this, because there is the old restaurant, there is the new restaurant in this side. Which room exactly were they coming from?
The new hotel block.
But that is one big room where members go for lunch. It's a lunch room, And
Yeah.
I'm wondering, because I have had lunch there. It's a big room. People go in there. There's a buffet lunch. It's not a small room. It's much bigger even than the room we are in right now. You said it was a lunch hour.
Yes.
It's normally very busy members having lunch there.
I may not be able to know which specific room inside, because, like I said, I did not get inside the room. So I only saw the entrance where they could come in and could go out.
You're saying that you are at on the outside, on the veranda, the last table.
Yes, on this
side near the new restaurant.
No, I was seated at the. I don't know whether this is the old or the new. From where the members sit, the lobby where we take our tea, you take your stairs. They put their serving dishes. There is an entrance. The last table at that corridor.
I
was seated there.
Previously, it used to be reserved for the deputy speaker. That table, that last table.
Thank you for the information that I didn't.
That's the last table on the veranda.
Yes, the last table on the veranda.
I see.
That's where I was seated.
So from there,
I could be able to see who comes in and walks all the way to the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Honorable Gimose.
Thank you, Chair. I want to apologize. I'm sorry, but I was here early enough before Mr. Speaker, you came. I went to sign for another committee, Transport Committee. I'm just interested out of the testimony of the witness who has just said that she was able to see some members walk in while coming out. They were very much excited. Your colleagues in Parliament or our colleagues in Parliament, can you be able to state who these members were?
Thank you. May I respond?
Although, of course, I know the last bit of the question is asking because he was not present when you gave your first say. But for his benefit, you can just.
I was actually concerned because I think he's taking back to what I had said earlier.
Yes. And usually, committees it's only we don't want a member shouldn't be stopped from taking the committee back. But for the benefit of Honorable Kemos, I think it's good to explain so that he can get a feel.
Now, because he's my colleague and we treat each other like colleagues, I will humbly, probably maybe go back to the story, to the narration. Mheshimiwa, I said I sat at the table and I was feeling a little bit of unwell, so I felt I should only take some fruits. So I ordered some fruits and I sat at the extreme end table on the corridor next to the, I don't know whether it's the old hotel, but I think it has been described as the old hotel. And where I was seated, I was able to see who is coming in, because you see I was idle because I was not eating. I was waiting for my fruits to be served. So I was able to see who comes in and where they get into. So I saw members going in and others coming out. And of course, you know, because you're a member, Mheshimiwa, whenever there is a matter in the chamber coming, there's a lot of discussions and talkings around what is going to be happening. Some people say, tunaangusha, wengine wanasema tunapitisha. You know that is the language. So sometimes you don't even pay attention to whoever is shouting and walking. And because that was not my mission, I was not able to really ascertain who is coming in and who is going. I was not able to ascertain that. I can only tell you probably the members I saw, and I can still remember who are seated next to me or near around me. Thank you.
Let's get Vincent Way.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mheshimiwa wa Mchomba, you are properly inducted. You know the standing orders of the House.
You're listening into the Powers and Privileges Committee session, grilling the Kiambu Women Representative, Gathoni Wamoshoba. She is one of those legislators who said that she witnessed bribery going on in Parliament as members of Parliament were being urged or convinced in one way or another to shoot down the report on the sugar report that was being worked on, to give answers as to whether the sugar that is in circulation or has been in circulation was contaminated. And so far in what she has said is that there is something to look into in terms of the bribery claims, people getting money within the precincts of Parliament, whether it's in the restroom or otherwise. But, you know, those who are in that particular Privileges and Powers Committee given her some questions, you know, just to verify the details that she's giving. That particular session being chaired by the Justin Muturi, the National Assembly Speaker. Now, something else that's going on is there's a special Senate meeting, that is Senate in Mashinani, and Kennedy Mureithi will be joining us shortly with the Senator for Bungoma, Moses Wetangula, and they're having their first session outside of Nairobi, and we'll be able to link in with Mureithi in a bit. But also going on today is we're getting reactions from Homa Bay, and Bernardo Juang is on the streets of Homa Bay, in Migori, beg your pardon, where of course the residents are giving their responses to the latest development in the case involving their governor, Okoth Obado, who is currently being remanded at industrial area prison, and we'll see what they have to say on the course of justice that is taking its part right now.
Well, thank you very much. We are live here in Ranen Market, whereby Migori County residents are currently waiting to hear what will come out from Limani Court, whereby Migori County Governor Zachary Okoth Obado will be arraigned. Anawezafanya nini kusaidia kuhusu kesi nini za expect that he will think about
is watching not just music. hearing slated for today, and we'll see what becomes of that. And of course, the latest being that he was remanded yesterday, and we'll see whether his request will be granted, given his team that is representing him in court to see that he gets his right, in their view, that is the bond request. And as we also know, the court also was quite emotional yesterday, with the family members being present, and some of them saying that there have been some death threats and direct threats to their lives. And this, of course, would definitely inform what would become of the case as it goes on, whether he'll be released on bond or not, and seem to be able to influence this continuing case. And in a moment, we'll be able to, well, as soon as definitely he's arraigned and we see what development there is from that, we will cross over there. And yes, as I mentioned earlier, just before it crossed over to Migori with Bernardo Juang, we also have Kennedy Mureithi, who is for the whole week actually going to be with the senators in Uasin Gishu. There is a special sitting in terms of them having or holding their first session out of town. That is Senate Mashinani. He has the Bungoma Senator Moses Wetangula, and he'll brief us on what to expect and what's been going on.
Well, thank you very much, Mark Masai. There in Nairobi, here in Eldoret and Uasin Gishu County, at the Uasin Gishu County Assembly, there has been a beehive of activity since morning, as senators have been carrying out their duties as it officially starts. Today is the official day, whereby they're even starting out with committees. There's going to the people. In the morning, we've also been able to how it really most
proceedings of the Senate in Taita Taveta and all over, so that the assemblies and the senators can benchmark each other, can share experiences, can learn from one another, and discharge their responsibilities in ensuring that devolved resources and the relationship between the two levels of government runs seamlessly for the benefit of the people of this country.
Well, thank you very much for that, and we'll move on to another issue that has been bogging down the country, and it is the issue whereby you yourself, you've declared yourself as the official opposition at this particular time, and so much is happening in the country with regards to tax and what happened in Bunge. What is your position on this?
I haven't declared myself, I actually am, because you know what happened to my colleagues. What happened in Parliament last week was a day of darkness and shame to this country. We saw the maneuvers that were undergoing the very important issue of taxation, that the government must bulldoze its way regardless. And this is not how a country ought to be run. I have said, and I want to repeat, that President Uhuru and his government must be more consultative, must engage in dialogue, must deal with issues that touch the ordinary person in better ways than what we are seeing. Any laws in this country, any matters that affect the ordinary person, the new constitution is very clear. Public participation is important. The views and the opinions of the public are important. What we saw is heavy boot behavior, thorax behavior, where you just muzzle numbers and get into the house. And what was even shocking to me, and this I addressed to my dear good friend, my former classmate and roommate, Speaker Muturi, that where you have a threshold of a supermajority, there is no way you can decide the outcome of a vote in the House through a voice vote. If you want a supermajority in the practice of all parliaments of comparable jurisdictions, you carry out a division and let members sign to the vote. Then you'll count and see whether you have met the threshold of 1/3 or not. It's not possible to determine that 1/3 of the House has shouted louder than the other, and vice versa. But more importantly, the passage of the memorandum of the President in the National Assembly brings a lot of load and weight on the people of this country. And you are taxing the basics that people live on. You raise the price of fuel, and immediately affect every level of life, whether you're talking of public transport, you're talking of manufacturing, you're talking of whatever is done. Energy, fuel is involved.
So as we are going into this session on Thursday, your party, had you whipped your members not to support it? Now, because it was a wide belief that NASA had spoken as one and say that we will be supporting the memorandum from the president.
ODM, describing itself as NASA, had a meeting, and even many members of Jubilee protested. If you look at
them and go insurance, Professor Rukwaro,
is to understand that a building cycle lives, and in this case, I want to talk about the building cycle or the project cycle. When we think about a building, let's start thinking about where is it located? It is located on land. So we need planning on that piece of land. So planning is a very important part of thinking about affordable housing. The next one is design. Designs which involves a lot of architects, a lot of planners, a lot of electrical engineers or engineers. We need to think of how they can bring out a design that optimizes cost and has no wastage of space. So design is a very important component. The next one is construction, another system within the life cycle of a building.
Yes.
And that part of construction is where effective expenses of materials and labor must be optimized. Each component of labor or material that is put in place must be seen to have value in terms of it has a return. So there is no leakage of money. If money was for labor, it goes for labor. If money is for material, it goes for material, and realizing that component. And the last portion is maintenance.
Yes.
Maintenance of building is very important. We should not only think of buying building that is cheap. Cheap can be expensive.
Yes. Right.
So we have really to think about when this building is put up after 2 years or 1 year, it is supposed to live for 50 years. For these 50 years, what is its running cost? How have you optimized the design and selection of materials so that the design is effective, is able to have climatic response, and in terms of materials, these are materials that are durable and can last long.
So you've looked at planning, design, construction, and maintenance. That's the full cycle that should give us something sustainable and lasting.
Yes. Yes.
We'll revisit that, revisit being one of the popular words, each step by step, and look at how you would be integrated with some of the other players and look at this. But Constant, from where you sit, is the approach the best in terms of adding more before even correcting what we have from an urban planner's perspective?
I think from a planning perspective, looking at a much wider overview,
yes,
we need to ask ourselves whether we want to be enablers or providers. And this whether the government wants to be enablers or providers. And this may vary according to different socio-economic groups that we have.
Yes.
The Cabinet Secretary during the Nation Leadership Forum last week mentioned different income groups. We had 0 to 15,000 per month, 15,000 to 50,000, etc., etc. And he seemed to emphasize a bit more to state that there was going to be a lot of focus on the 0 to 15,000. But the kind of model that was being perceived seemed to be one that would benefit the 50,000 and above, the current group that are rent paying and not those
in terms of being able to afford it.
Yeah, being able to afford, not those necessarily in, say, the informal settlements, because and we've seen also recent failures in some of these projects. A few weeks ago, we were discussing at UN Habitat how one of the slum upgrading projects in Kibera seemed to completely fail because they came and put up high-rise structures for them. And those who are put from second floor and above moved out due to just very simple socio-economic factors. Many of these people used to use their housing frontage as a kind of a shop. And suddenly they're moved to 5th, 6th floor. So for them, it doesn't make sense. They can't do it. You're telling them to pay to stay in this house. You're telling them to, even if there'll be perceived ownership, they still can't afford. So they ended up renting them out and moving out. So it's important that we recognize who exactly are we targeting, okay, and how do we want to target. And that's where now, once we know who we're targeting, if it's a very low income, if it's those who can already afford, if it's the very rich, we'll end up taking different approaches with each of them. And that's where now, as Prof said, now the planning comes in.
So when you're talking about enablers or providers, it's not an either-or kind of scenario. It's just define it from the get-go so it's more like have your vision right and defined.
Yeah.
So from what you see and from what you hear in the name of affordable housing as a part of the Big Four, are they being enablers or providers?
It's actually not coming too clear where they want to stand. When we talk about giving private sector an opportunity to invest, then it sounds more of an enabling environment. But when we talk of giving 200,000 units to the poor of every 1 million units, that to the urban or rural poor of every 1 million units, then it sounds more like a provider.
Yes.
Provider scheme. And the danger of this provider mentality at times is the sustainability. Okay, because then you may talk about things like maintenance, you may talk of things like ownership, and the likes, and even affordability to stay there versus current economic situation of the people you may providing to. So we have to be very, as I said, very clear who we're targeting with this housing, how we are going to plan for it. Of course, now when we talk of planning, we're going into a much wider perspective. We're looking at what's the infrastructure that comes when we're talking housing. We're talking of land use management. We're talking of utility, provision of utilities, human settlements,
to be able to hold the population that will be there.
Economic opportunities and
in terms of planning, and this is something that you can all respond to when you get a chance, or if you feel like just jump in. Is this more of a regime-bound initiative in your view, or are there, measurements in place that even if Jubilee leaves next, after 2022 and it's another regime, what will guarantee that this will continue to be provided for the Kenyan, the affordable housing? Because it seems to be quite the agenda for Jubilee. What guarantees, especially from, for instance, Kenya Bureau of Standards perspective, what measures are there and structures are there to continue in the transition period?
I think if you look at the world, we are talking about Millennium Development Goals transiting to the Sustainable Development Goals. If you look at both, it had affordable housing as one of the components. And definitely this will outlast the current regime. There'll be another regime, definitely, maybe in future, or the same regime. But all regimes have this as part of the constitutional requirement, which is adopted from the United Nations goals. So if you look at the kind of planning that is required, it's for the purpose of meeting the requirements of the populations in Kenya. I think the current population could be in the region of 50 million. Definitely there is a need to plan for that, whether there is one regime or the other. And as Kenya Bureau of Standards, we always have what is called a National Standardization Plan. It's not a Kenya Bureau of Standards plan. It's a plan for the nation in terms of the standards required to meet both the aspirations of government and those of the people of Kenya. So you would find that, for example, in this year, we have a draft national standardization plan that goes up to 2020. Last year, we had an earlier one going up to 2019. So this plan is reviewed every year.
Okay.
And when we do the standards, we do in line with the aspirations of Kenyans.
Not the government of the day.
The needs of the people.
All right.
Yes.
And I'd want to get to the set standards in a bit. You have the institutional memory, and you've seen, from time and again, governments trying to, improve the housing for Kenyans. What has worked and what hasn't. First of all, what guarantees this is not a regime-bound project?
Probably, let me start by saying this. 61% of Kenyans are living in deplorable situations. So what it means, every government that comes into place wants to ensure it improves their lives, if it thinks right. And the things that would make it not achieve that, there are things they can effect through certain registrations. Let's put it this way. The cost of buildings can come low and can be affordable if some of the things I'm going to state can be done. One, the land must be controlled its price in one way or another. The land is very expensive, especially in urban centers. Two, the financing of housing must be thought again. Currently, we have only 25,000 mortgagees, and we have a large population of people who are getting financings from SACCOs and other sources.
Yes.
And here we are saying, if the government could do something on financing to create an environment that it is easy to get that mortgage and to pay back, is something that can really help. The other one is infrastructure services. Most of the lands that we are putting, most of these houses, does not have infrastructure. We need the government to adhere to its regulations or its act, where it has stated very clearly in Physical Planning Act that any development should be done in serviced land. But currently that is a big cost because we have to get that infrastructure. So we really need to effect the issue of government being civil by actually developing the infrastructure areas where it wants these houses to be. The other one is registrations. Registration, as we start now, there are bottlenecks to housing affordability. For example, Sectional Property Act is a good act that allows people to own houses at upper levels, not necessarily on the ground. But you see that it is seamless with the other laws. It has so many conditions to effect it. And currently, the way we are going, we don't want people to be on low-rise building. They have to be on high-rise building because of scarcity of land.
Yeah.
So we really need to effect that change to that Property Act so that it is effective. The other one is Building Code. As we stand now, the Building Code was enacted or was made part of our regulations in 1968. That regulations has a lot of limitations, especially on the materials you should use and the materials that should be specified by consultants and that they can pass during the approval. So we really need to effect new regulations or new acts that can effect a better enabling environment for this.
Yes.
As we stand now, after Sunbeam collapse, there was a team that came up, a commission that came up to effect new regulations. I've worked on those regulations and they have never been effected. The Built Environment Bill, it is in the attorney chambers. It has never been effected. The building regulations, and if those ones were implemented, what we are stating there in that bill is that materials will be performance oriented, not specific. The current building regulation said you should use masonry, you should use concrete, and so on. You should use steel. But this one, we did not go to the specifics. We actually stated that what we need is performance of that material that you want to use meets this requirement. So we created a criteria. If it meets, and I think Kenya Bureau of Standards, probably that's what they would be very keen.
Right.
The other problem that we have that can cut costs is technologies and materials. Come up with the criteria. If you want to cut the cost, participants, materials of how, like what they are, without shorten that problem. To house the people that each of us would want, how can the government work with the relevant stakeholders to come up with models or a regime or policies that can actually address this issue of affordability?
Constance, you can respond to some of the proposals put forward by Professor, but also, and it sounds like I'm pushing an agenda here, but you've mentioned, you pointed out the Kibra project, which was failed. And it seems the verve that was with that project when it was being launched died somewhere along the line. And it's good to look at history so we can learn from it and not repeat the same mistakes. And that's why I would ask, from your point, if you feel or if you're concerned that some of the projects being put forward now, there is a risk of losing momentum into the years with a different leadership.
Okay, there's definitely risk of losing momentum because a lot depends on leadership.
Yes.
But as long as we have people need to be sheltered. That's one thing that's very clear. And over the years, we've had a number of housing projects that have been initiated. We used to have the sites and service schemes in I think it was Dandora, where people would get different setups depending on what they required. You could get a small piece of land with a kitchen and a bedroom, or with a kitchen and 2 bedrooms, and then you kind of, they would grow over time, depending on the needs of people. We've also had other slum upgrading, I would call slum upgrading projects that have ended up shifting to middle-class owners. Nyayo High Rise being a well-known example. Yes. There was also, I think, one in Pumwani that also ended up like that. So definitely, and then we've had other bigger housing projects. We had Buruburu and Umoja that were, I think, World Bank and USAID funded years back. And then at one point in the 80s and 90s, the whole housing discussion was kind of left to the market. And the result has been what we can call, I don't call it unaffordable, but almost exploitation of people, especially in urban. My focus tends to be a bit more Nairobi-based, as you can see. Rural housing is something probably a bit different because it's related to the kind of farmlands and kind of what people are doing there. So the need will always be there, but that's where the angle of planning comes in, and there was mentioned by Mr. Kerich on some of the urban renewal projects that they have, in which they're trying to rebuild some of the old council estates. I think he mentioned Jivanji, Bachelors, he mentioned some in Suna Road, and quite a number of the old Uhuru and the likes of the old Eastlands estates. Of course, the question comes about in the local scenario, are we sure that the correct people will get these houses, or will they end up being hijacked, given to hijacked by the wrong people? But as long as we have that demand, there's requirement from both local and national government to keep the drive moving. It's interesting because all the housing schemes I've mentioned have not been locally funded. You know, we mentioned World Bank, USAID, and the likes. So there's and they've mentioned, the government has mentioned that they want to bring in private investors. Now, unfortunately, the private investor, his focus is ROI, return on investment, and there may be much more return on investment in meeting the needs of the upper market area than the lower market. We've talked to the 0 to 1500 and the 1500 to 50,000, and that's the need for direct government policy and direct government intervention, as Prof has mentioned, when it comes to land, financing, and even building materials. A recent study that was done, I think 3 weeks ago in Johannesburg, was looking at the cost of building in different African Commonwealth nations. And funny enough, ours was the cost of building in Kenya with a focus on Nairobi, was more expensive than other African
urban centers.
Yes. Now, if it's already the cost is more expensive based on a number of the points that the two gentlemen have made, then we would like to see direct intervention in bringing down some of these costs, either changing the building code or incentivizing the contractors, or even making the cost of importing some of building materials much cheaper.
Or zero rating, as Prof has pointed out. They've mentioned the material issue, and you've talked about setting some standards.
Yes.
What are those standards that you have set to help in this affordable housing project?
Thank you. First, a clarification on the issue of buildings and or affordable housing and regimes.
Yes.
Definitely the biggest driver of anything in the world is government. And government is tied to a regime. So if you look at the government, the main focus is the big four.
Yes.
And you cannot start doing things if you don't have a policy. So the Jubilee policy, for example, looks at four things, big things: the agro-processing, manufacturing, affordable housing, and health. And definitely this has to be cascaded downwards. And for us at Kenya Bureau of Standards, as part of a government institution, we have to go by this policy to ensure that the government of the day succeeds. So one of the things that we have done as part of this process is, one, it talked about the codes of buildings. We have currently suggested structural Euro codes as the best way to go, because it is more flexible. It deals with different materials. For example, Eurocode 2 deals with concrete, 3 deals with steel, 4 deals with composite materials, 6 deals with masonry, which is the current building material, although we have steel also and composite. 7 and 8 deals with geotechnical design for the structure of the earth, and then 8 deals with earthquakes. Fortunately, in Kenya we don't have a lot of earthquakes. They are unstable areas, but currently we don't design for this kind of thing because we have not had serious issues. Then along the value chain, as Professor has said, we have the design. If you are designing a 20-story building, definitely you have to use materials that can withstand the weight for 20-story buildings. And we have standards for structural steel. We have standards for concrete. Then on the side of construction, there are codes of practice. We're working with the National Construction Authority. And then we have the maintenance. We have standards for paints, for plasters, for all kinds of materials that are required for maintaining houses, even for electrical items and so forth. So if you look at these standards, they actually assist the construction industry to enable them to gain some transfer of knowledge. If you look at the way Kenya Bureau of Standards does standards, we involve all stakeholders, from civil society through the consumer associations, to government institutions, to universities like University of Nairobi, and other government institutions which deal with the buildings, like the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure. So when we have these committees, we look at all the aspects that would ensure that these buildings are affordable in each kind of category. So those are the kinds of standards that.
And are you also pushing for, the incentives that he's talking about in terms of bringing in materials, perhaps even zero rating?
Yes, for example, for SMEs, we do have an incubation program for small and medium enterprises who are willing to work on some of these materials. One, we have what is that we involved. Then have standards. We have such as sections that you can use and design a house that you can build in a few days.
Okay.
Because you know construction costs are also high. If you look at the people who are doing constructions, they charge by a number of days. If you have precast concrete, for example, it's possible to build a house within a week.
Okay.
And that also brings down the cost.
All right,
Professor. And we have standards for that.
Yes, Professor.
Look at other performance. For us to get this affordable housing, we have to go industrial. Industrial in the sense that economics of scale is what can reduce the cost of building. Okay. And for us to achieve that, we need to start to manufacturing. And
that's put forward. What is being anticipated?
High-rise buildings.
Okay.
22 stories and above.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Constant, in conclusion, first of all, do you think the housing levy is a way to go in terms of helping support this program? And what do you think is really being put forward for Kenyans? What can we expect to see?
There's always that danger of that, which is a question people have been asking. Why should I pay and yet I will not benefit from that? Okay, that's very questionable. I think CS also mentioned those who don't yet will be refunded when they retire. I don't know how that will be done, but it will be very interesting.
Yes.
A key thing we need to also ask ourselves is what exactly do we mean by housing? It is very easy to say that housing is that structure, but housing comes with much more. Okay, housing comes with when we look at it from, say, the land use perspective.
Okay.
Okay, we have a family living there. These people need shops. These kids need to play.
And the utilities.
Yeah, they need water, they need power, they need, okay, we don't have telephone lines anymore. Yeah. We need to have schools in the area. We need to, there needs to be a much more integrated approach towards this housing
So let's not
policy.
just think of that
one
unit.
So let's not just think of that one unit.
Okay.
And because when we look at it from that perspective, also we get to see the amount of investment that will be required.
Okay.
One of the biggest challenges we have, even as planners, when we're doing land subdivisions in some of the outskirts of the city, is precisely the fact that you have to allocate land for other uses. Okay, and at times the landowners don't want that.
Okay.
You see.
Yes. Sorry to stop you at this point. There's a lot to talk about in terms of the housing, affordable housing dream that we have for the country. But I'm told that we have to cross over. Thank you so much, Constant Cap. Thank you, Professor Rukwaro. Thank you, Bwana Andrew Mayo from the Kenya Bureau of Tumagedi. She is one of those who is accused, and it's alleged that she's one of those who are giving members of parliament some money to bribe them and convince them to shoot down the sugar report. Let's listen in.
So, Honorable Fatuma, that is the
It is true, especially on the recommendation. What I did, Mercury places this parliament.
Thank you. Could you do that?
Sorry?
Honorable Parasa is known to